Hey everyone, Darren Carnell here. Welcome back to my studio. Welcome to part 5 of the Kylo Ren tutorial series. Give me 1 second. I would like a sip of coffee, if I may. Right, let me just check on the screen that everything is working. It is recording. The music is on. The mic is on. Awesome. So part 5, we're going to carry on with Kylo's face. We're going to carry on working on his skin. More layers, more detail, more subtlety. All of that stuff that I usually spend days doing. I'm building up layers and layers. We're going to carry on with that. One thing that I do want to bring up before I start, as I'm recording this, not necessarily when you're watching this, because I'm not sure at what point in time various people are going to be seeing this video, but as I'm recording this, I've made a couple of changes to my studio. I've got a new piece of hardware and I've made some changes to my audio settings, which I'll explain briefly now. If I bring my overhead camera in, I'll be able to show you, if I can make the camera point at it, I'm still getting used to it. I actually went down to my trackpad then and I don't need to do that anymore. If I go up to my close-up camera with me in the corner, there's me in the corner, right. Ignore the creaking on my camera arm there, but this thing, it's called a Stream Deck and it's my new latest toy and it is wonderful. Each button has got a little LCD screen behind it, so if I press buttons, everything changes and I can have it set up, and this is going to evolve probably a lot over the coming years. But I've got it set up so all those top buttons open programs, things that I use for my work. That folder opens up all of my recording software settings that I need to do when I'm making videos for you guys. So if I need to bring up the start titles, for example, press the start titles, bring them up, go back to my main camera, hello, go back to the close-up. I can do all of that just by pressing buttons, and I can see easily what it is that I'm trying to press. Previously, and you guys will have seen this, if I go back to the main camera, you guys will have seen this on my old videos or any videos before this one. Anytime I need to click on something, whether I'm bringing up the end credits, the Patreon thank you card that comes up at the end before my website card comes up, anytime I need to do something like that, I will probably, because I've been painting and stuff, go, hang on, where's my trackpad? And I'll try and bring my trackpad, my mouse essentially, go, hang on, where's my trackpad? Hang on, where's my cursor? Okay, there it is, hang on, what am I needing to click on? And do all of that. Whereas now, I've just got instant buttons. I can go, oh yeah, there's the end credits, and boom. And I don't have to think about it. And that's wonderful. That is genuinely a game changer for me working in my studio, and I can't wait to get used to it, because right now it's still quite new and I still keep going to reach for the trackpad to do things. I'm like, oh no, hang on, you've got buttons here. So I'm gonna have to get used to that. Also, the layout will change, how I can use it will change as I get used to it, as I adapt to it, as I find better ways of doing things. But essentially it is a complete game changer. Also, you can see a button here called memes. If I go into that, if I do something wrong, I can do stuff like that now, which is yay. So yeah, it is definitely a good thing, and that is making my life so much easier. I've done some tests with it so I can try and get used to it. Oh my god, I'm burning up here. I've got my door to my studio closed and the heating on, and anytime I do that, I always forget, when I close the door I need to turn the heating down, because this room turns into an oven and I get really bright red faced and I get shiny head and it's terrible. I'm melting now, but I've already started, so I'll change the heating later. So that's the new piece of hardware, and I will do a separate video at some point for YouTube and Instagram, but I just wanted to show you guys what I'm working with now, that it'll take me a while to get used to, and to be honest, it might be just as slow doing things at the beginning because I'm still go to reach for the mouse, for the trackpad to do stuff, and it's like, no, you've got buttons. But once I'm used to it, it'll just be bump, 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 and I won't even have to look at it probably, because I'll know where the buttons are. I'll be able to do them by feel. So it's going to be so much better. So much better just being able to go, yeah, click, and do a thing without having to look for the trackpad, look for the cursor, move the cursor to the bit on the screen that I need to click. No, just one button does everything. And you can have one button doing multiple things. You can have it. So you press a button and it does a thing, and then it waits a gap, and then does another thing and another thing, and waits, and doesn't. You can have it set to do infinite possibilities. So that, very exciting. Also, I've changed the settings on my microphone slightly, on my audio. I've changed the settings on my microphone itself so that no longer, if I happen to have my voice, my volume set for me talking quietly, sometimes if I suddenly went loud or coughed or shouted or did something, it would sort of blur out the microphone. It would clip the audio and it would sound horrible. Now I've put I forgot what it's called now, a limiter, a compressor on it, so that can't happen, so that sounds better. I've put a thing on it that limits any background hiss. Sometimes the microphone on during quiet bits would pick up things like the sounds of the hard drives. I've got 3 hard drives on my desk over there. Those, when they're spinning, they make a bit of noise. My computer itself, which is sort of down there under my monitors, when that fan is going, when it's cooling itself down, that's quite noisy. The microphone picks that up. So I've put a thing on it that suppresses all of that sound, so that should sound better. Also, the main thing is that I've now got the music, instead of coming from my iTunes, I would just normally press play on iTunes, the music would come out of my 2 speakers into the studio and then get picked up by the microphone along with my voice at the same time. That's how I used to do it. So the audio was sort of mixed together. It was my voice, which was clear because it was pointing at the microphone, and sort of music in the background because the speakers are over there and the microphone doesn't pick up things from the side very well, but it was there and it was enough to stop it from being silent. Well, now the music is coming from inside the computer directly onto the recording. Now, what that means is in my studio where I am now, it's silent here apart from my voice. There's no music here, but I know that you guys are listening to music because I've got it set up and I can see the little volume meter thing on my screen, on my recording software going up and down. So I know you guys are hearing the music. And what that means is instead of getting fuzzy, distant mono music through my studio into the microphone, you're getting the music as the actual music file is, which means I can have it a little bit quieter, it'll be in stereo, it'll be clearer, and it might just be one of those things that hopefully just makes my future videos sound a little bit better, maybe be a bit more pleasant to watch. I don't know. It's a small improvement, but it's an improvement. Now, hopefully I've got the levels right between the music and my talking, so you can hear me clearly over the music. I hope so. If it's wrong, you can tell me and I'll adjust it. That's going to change over time, but I've only just done that now. So that's the 2 changes to my studio while I'm working. So let's get on with this. Get my chair in the right position. Let's bring this camera over. Now I've got that camera pointing. Oh, see, I've just done it again. I've just reached for the trackpad. If I change the overhead camera with me in the corner, now I'll point that back down because that was pointing at the stream deck. If I slide in my thing, let's try and get this in the right position. Creak. So if I'm working on a thing, that would be about there. Let's bring this a little bit closer to me. So that would be about there. Let me tilt that down a little bit more. That's about right, isn't it? So if I was holding the head, I'd be painting on it there. Perfect. And if I need to zoom out or anything, I will just get the webcam settings panel. In fact, I'll do that now. Bring that up, so if I need to do anything, I've got it there ready to click on. Right, so let's get on with this. Kylo Ren, Oh my god, I'm actually melting here. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to go and open that door. Because it's too hot in here. Okay. That should allow some air in and let it cool down a bit. Okay, get the trackpad out of the way because I don't need it. It's going to take me a while to get used to that. And I'm not going to be... you don't have to worry that I'm not going to be going mental with the memes and the GIFs or anything. It's just good to know that I can in the future on whatever videos, or even if I do live streaming, to be able to have those. And you know, if I do something and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I've done. It's just funny being able to do that, but it's mostly going to be used for simply controlling the studio, controlling my recordings and making it a lot quicker and easier. So I've got my paints all up here. You can see a few of them there, but the rest of them are just up here. My brushes are here. My water and my flow enhancer is just out of shot here. I've just got that out of the way so I don't knock it over. My palette, in fact, let me put the palette there so you can see what I'm doing when I'm blobbing paint on there. But I'll pick it up and show you when I'm doing close-up stuff. I did clean the palette, as in I washed any dust or anything off it. It's still got layers of paint on it, but I usually don't do that for ages. Okay. That was almost 12 minutes of talking about stuff. Let's actually do some painting. So, Kylo. Let me have a look. So, I'd done the black on the collar. Where are you? Where's the focus? About there. So I'd done the black on the collar and I was doing layers. Let me bring up the photos of him that I had. I was doing layers of stuff around his face just to build up the subtleties and the variations, the stuff that I normally do. And we're just going to carry on and do some more of that. So I'm just looking at the pictures just to quickly remind myself, okay, what's his face like? Alright. We can start off with, let's do some shadows under his eyes. I've got to remember to point it up. When I'm looking at it, it's like that because that's pointing at me there. I've got to remember that the camera is there. I'll point it up at the camera. So I'm going to do some shadows under his eyes because if you look at people's faces, I'm just briefly off second going to get my little knife because I think there's a piece of hair or something stuck in the paint. And it's like, or a piece of dust. It's like, how did you get there? I put covers on this overnight. So that must have happened while I was painting. Okay, that's gone. If you look at people's faces, now let me get a brush so I can point this out. I've done some reddish, purplish colour under his eyes, but if you look at people, in the corner here, they often have a bluish colour, which often turns into a purplish colour, which often turns into a brown, like a dark brown. You know, that tired look that people have in their eyes? It's like a brownish purple. And that is sort of down here, and he has that, so I'm going to do a little bit of that. I suppose I can use this brush. I could get a smaller brush, but... how small do I want this to be? I'll mix it with this. I'll probably use a smaller brush to do it. So, okay, let's... What do I want? Eeny, meeny, miny. Let's get a tiny little bit, even though it's not going to be the main colour. I've got a black brown, which is essentially my replacement for umber when I was using the old paints. Just give it a quick shake, because I've done that thing again of forgetting to shake all my paints beforehand. I'm going to put just a drop of that down, but that's not going to be the main colour. To do this purplish brownish colour, what I need is let's get some red. Oops, give it a shake. Ooh, excuse me. Because I've got wooden floorboards and my desk obviously is on the same floor. Sometimes when I shake this, just the movement of my body shaking makes my camera shake. So I don't know if that was doing it there, but if it was, that's what it was. So get some of that. Let's mix some blue in with that. I mean, I haven't mixed anything yet. I'm just dropping them down so I have access to them. And assuming you can see that just there, I'm just putting the drops down so I've got access to them. And let me pick up like a reddish brown. What's this called? Hull red. And you can see the colour. It's sort of a chocolatey brown. And it's one of the ones I use. Initially I bought it to try and find a replacement for chocolate brown, and I then realised that it needed a few different things to make that happen. But that was close enough. So what I'll do, let's put that up here. So if I get some of the brown, but let's get some blue. Let's drop some red on that. I'm just going to tilt that so I can see it. There you go, that's the colour there. Let's get some more red. Let's get a little bit of the umber, well, the black brown I should say. Let's drop some water on it. I just want to thin it down. Now it's often difficult to figure out what colour you're using when you're doing stuff like this, which is going to be super thin wash. When you're mixing a thing and it's sort of a solid colour, I'm just holding this off to the side while I'm doing all this and adding the water to it. The colour I need is actually more purple than that. That's actually quite close. Let's put a little bit more blue in that. And chuck some more water over here just to thin it down. When you're mixing and you're mixing a solid colour, sometimes it can be hard to visualize how it's going to work when you turn it into a really thin wash that will just go over another colour. And that sort of comes with practice, and to be honest, a lot of the time doesn't come at all. It's a thing that you just have to randomly try, but you get there eventually. So what I've done there, I took those colours, you just saw me mixing them into, it's more red up at this end, it's more purple up at this end, I added more blue, and then I just took some off to the side, added some water to really thin it down loads, and that's what I'm going to use. So I might as well use this brush for now, but I'm going to have to be careful because if you have too much, in fact no, I've just figured out what would happen probably if I used that brush. Too much liquid would drop onto the head more than what I wanted, and I've done that before where I think I've just got a small amount of liquid and then I start using it and it just goes blop and puts a big blob of water on the thing because surface tension pulls the water along, and I didn't realise I had that much water on the brush. So this is not necessarily going to show up straight away because it is quite thin, but I'm putting it down in small layers. It is essentially the colour that you just saw me mix and then you saw me water it down, and I'm just slowly and carefully adding it around the corner. I'm looking at pictures of him, so I'm not just making this up. I'm looking at pictures of him to see where the skin is, you know, discoloured, where the skin is a different colour. I'm working on that. This brush is actually a little bit too pointy, but I can run with it. And just slightly darkening these bits in the corner of his eyes. Hope I'm doing that on camera. And in fact, what I can do is take some of that colour and just add a little bit in different places, because I can see the colour that I've got, and I'm thinking, you know what, that could work in just a bit of the corner of his nose, not the whole thing, but just that one corner. That would work quite well there. And this is what you'll do. You sort of get used to taking colours that you've mixed for one purpose, one particular thing, and then you'll take that colour and use it all around the head, and you just go, oh, that can go on his ear, oh, that can go on his nose. And because I used to just do one colour at a time in one place, and that was it. And then I realised that I got better randomness, I suppose, by using different colours that I'd done for different purposes, but using them in different places. And like now, the reddish version of that colour, I'm just doing a super thin wash over the lips, and it's not going to be the final colour, but it's going to help get the lips towards the colour that they need to be, which is good. So I'm going to add a little bit of that actually up here into the corners, just under his hairline. Now he doesn't have a hairline that, where the hair goes back off his forehead. When I use this method of painting coloured shadows around the hairline, it's often done when it's a sculpt where the hair comes back off the forehead, like mine does. And painting these sort of artificially coloured shadows works for that. And I've talked about it in a previous video. I can't remember whether it was a video in this series or a different one, because I'm doing quite a few. But I know I've talked about it in the past, where it's not necessarily visually realistic as to how people are, but at this small scale, it helps for me with sort of slightly exaggerating shadows and just adding a little bit of colour, and I just prefer it. But when the hair is like this, and it's coming forward and away, and it creates quite a hard line, I don't use this as much. But I'm just dropping a little bit of colour there. Put a little bit more red. You know what, let me bring the focus up, or zoom it in or something. Now, unfortunately for this, I can't do this with the buttons. I do actually have to use my trackpad for this. Camera 2, advanced settings, zoom it in a little bit more, and let's bring the focus up a little bit. So, where's the focus? See, unfortunately, because of the way the camera and the light is, when I bring it too close, the camera actually blocks the light. But I think the focus... I just realised I'm struggling to see what's on the screen because I've got my preview quite small. Okay, so about there will do. So I need to get some more water. I did a bit of red and it dried up, and now I've got a big hard blob of red paint on there, because I was talking and doing stuff, and the little bit of paint that I put on, which was too thick, dried. I might have to go over that with some skin colour to blend it down, but I can work with the rest of it. There's a little bit there that is just a bit too thick. So I'll add some red to his ear there. Doesn't matter that some of that liquid is going into the sculpted line there, because that's going to be painted black anyway, so that doesn't matter. So I'm just adding a little bit of red here and there. Now add a little bit, although I actually want that to be a little bit more brown under, just trying to make sure that you can see this, under that corner of his nose. And I want to take that sort of out and away. You know what I normally have? I normally have a dry brush separately, so that if I put a bit on and I just want it spreading around quickly without needing to clean the brush that I'm using, I normally have a dry brush separate. Ooh, see, that's why I got some paint on too thick. I was reaching into a bit that I thought was thinned down paint. It was actually quite thick. I usually have a separate brush, which I'll use this one for at the moment, so that if I'm putting on a certain colour and it goes on, and then I'm thinking I actually want that to be a little bit spread out and thinned down, and just sort of pushed around a bit, and you can do that by cleaning your brush and getting some water on your brush, but sometimes you just want to do it really quickly before it dries. Have a spare brush there, and then you can just go back on with a dry brush and just go blub 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 blub, and just help move some stuff around. Okay. Now I can see I want a bit more purpley brown under his eyes, so I'm going to, let's get some of that blue that I had, and hang on, let me put Kylo back, get some more of the blue. I'm going to mix the blue in with this red to get some water to make a more purple version again. I know where I'm going to mix to it. Let's mix some, because I often use this colour by itself for a similar thing, or for stubble, but grey blue. My old version used to be called blue grey. And that goes down like that. So I get a little bit of that and mix that into it. What it'll do is it'll lighten it up. So I can see straight away that's doing that. And oh, it's so liquidy, all of the red is running into it. But that grey blue I use for stubble, or at least part of stubble, because I do lots of different layers of stubble and lots of flicking to give the broken up bristly appearance of stubble. I used to just do a wash of blue grey and that would be my stubble. Now I do probably about 12 different layers, but it's a start, and you can also do things like what I've just done, which was to add some blue grey into the colour just to make it a bit more blue and a bit more purple, because it's mixing with red, and to lighten it down a bit. And now I'm just using it in these corners, and because my brush is quite wet, it's going on fairly thick, so I'm just using the second brush to wipe a lot of it off. It's actually coming on quite thick. I think because this brush is very pointy, like it has super thin end, a lot of the liquid is just coming off. Instead of spreading around, it's sort of just dropping off in one place. But I'm getting the job done. So I'm taking more of that purple colour. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to where the camera was then. Where are we? About there. Get the spare brush just to dab those around a little bit. Let's use that slightly purple colour just to give some shading under his chin. Only subtle, I only want a little bit. And I'm going to go over it with the stubble colour when I do the stubble, but I just want to add a little bit of... because his chin has a slightly reddish brown. It's almost like a natural shadow. It's the colour of his chin, but it looks like a shadow. But I'm just adding that under there first, which will be gone over with actual stubble when we get around to doing that. So I'm just doing a couple of random markings here and there. It never hurts to do that because that will just add more variation, more subtlety. Taking some of that red colour that we put on the nose for a shadow, which is something that I've always done even from the beginning. I'm just going to take a little bit of that and spread that onto his actual face, onto his cheek, and do it. This is really thin and watery, but I'm also going to take this spare brush and just spread it around a little bit more. So it's super subtle, which a lot of what I do is almost to the point where you look at a thing and go, you've not done anything, Darren. And it looks like that sometimes. And it's also why I'm really quite slow at painting, but it gets the results. It gets the results that I'm after, and apparently going by my waiting list, it gets the results that other people are after too. So I am not going to complain. So I've just done some of that reddish, purplish, bluish colour around a few different places. I'm just doing some... Am I still on camera there? Where's the... About there. Just done some in some different places. And what I want to do now is actually get some brown. Because as I was doing that, I was looking at the pictures and... Oh my god, my nose is so itchy today. I must have a stray hair from my moustache. Sometimes you get little tiny hairs and they just go up and poke your nose, which makes your nose really itchy, like for the entire day, because you don't know that they're there. I might as well leave that brush out actually, I'll use that one again. I want to get some brown. Oh my god, I'm going to cut my nose off in a minute. But not the dark brown there, I want a quite skin colour. Like I would probably use leather brown if I was going to do this. Frustratingly, there is actually paint in there and I could use that. But I'm looking at the colours that I've got. What can I mix? Let's see. If I use... Where's... I've lost a colour. How can I lose a colour? Flat brown, flatbird, saddle brown, flat brown, whole red, mahogany brown. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to get some mahogany brown, and I think I'm going to mix it with some light brown. There you go. So those two. Why is that out of... Oh, I changed the focus for up here, didn't I? Let's put the focus back down there, and also let's zoom out a little bit again. Okay, so I'm going to get some mahogany brown and some light brown. Give them both a shake. That's the sound I make. So I know I've mentioned it again previously, but that clicking that you could hear when I was shaking it was a little metal ball that's inside each of these. So when you shake it up, it actually mixes. Because unlike these, where I can take the lid off and actually get to the paint and stir it up, you can't do that with these. So little ball bearings, but ones that don't rust, you have to be careful in that, and it helps mix them up. I mean, you could prise that thing off and probably stick a toothpick in there or something. You wouldn't be able to stir it very well, but you'd get something done. Okay, so that's those two colours there. So I'm just going to mix them up. Let's plonk them into a different thing. Let's drop a little bit of red in there, not much, tiny amount. Come on, I know I said a tiny amount, but I do want some. Wow, it's so easy to use red and go from not using any to using too much. It's so powerful and overpowering that you only have to use a little bit, and it's like, no, not enough, no, not enough, no, that's too much. And that happens really quickly. That's actually quite close to the colour that I want, but I think I want to add into that. Oh, eeny, meeny, miny. Let's put some skin colour in it. I'm going to get a little bit, just because it looked like the right colour. Actually, no, let's use that instead. Beige red. Now that's the colour that I was using for my base layer as one of the main tanned flesh equivalents. I just want to add a little bit into that, so I just want to make it a bit more fleshy, but still a darker brown version. One more bit in there, and then I think that's about right. So now I'm just going to chuck a load of flow enhancer in there, chuck a load of water in there, and clean off the brush so I don't get excess on there. Oh wow. I'm going to shave off my blooming moustache if this itchy doesn't go away. Have a coffee, Darren. Try and forget about your tickly nose. Okay, so we've got that colour, which was a mixture of whatever colours I've just said. I've got a brilliant memory. Okay. So, way too much on that brush. Let's get rid of most of that. Okay, so let's come in here. Where's about there? I'm gonna put some around there on his cheeks, but let's get that. Oh, I've done it the wrong way around. It's okay, I can still use this. I meant to put it on and then I was going to use the brush to thin it down, but I realised I've got the brushes the wrong way around. I was using the thicker brush to put the colour on, and then using the thin pointy brush to spread it around. It still works, it's fine, it was just not the way I was going to do it. Okay, so I'm going to get this brown. I've just done some. Shall I bring the camera, shall I zoom it in a little bit? Tell you what, I'll leave the focus where it is, which means I can hold it where it is. I will just bring the zoom a little bit further in. So I'm taking that brownish colour. I'll just put some around the corner of his nose there onto his face. I'm now going to take a little bit and just put a little bit around his lip in the centre. Not over the whole thing, just up against the edge, just in that centre, and then blend it in. Nope, I need a better brush for that blending. Let's use that brush, get some water on it, dry it off. Okay. So let's take some of that brown colour again, and I'm going to put some under here. Create a bit of a shadow colour, but also add a bit of colour into the skin. So it sort of comes across as a shadow and it sort of comes across as skin colour. Now I'm going to get some of that and add that to the side of his eyes where we were doing the shadowy colour before. Just beyond where that shadowy colour finishes, I'm going to take some of this lighter, redder brown colour and add some there. Now I'm going to do the same under his eyes and take some of that around from the purple shadow in the corner to where it comes around his eyelids. Drop some of the colour down, take the dry or slightly damp brush and just dab it around, spread it around, thin it around. It'll get the job done. Let's put some shadow, let's put some of this reddy brown colour on his temples. Spread it around a little bit. Now I can tell that brush is just getting a little bit dry. We don't want it wet, but we want it just damp enough to be able to spread the colour around. Especially if the colour is drying itself as we're using it, because the colour on the brush that I'm painting with has started to dry. So get rid of some of the colour and painting most of it on my skin. Let's get some under here. So see that where I just put that? Dab that around, spread it around. And it's really starting to build up now. So what I'm going to do is do some random dots of this around his face. Let me wet that brush a bit more. Random dots around his cheeks. Doing it on both sides so I know I'm doing it equal. Let's do a bit down here, this sort of corner of his, like the jowl area. Add a bit of colour and a bit of shadow to that. Blob the colours on, come in with a damp, clean brush, spread it around a bit. And you'll see the way we're doing it, we're not just picking a skin colour and painting the entire face and going, that's it, skin, we're done. It's lots of tiny small build-ups of different colours, different areas, different parts of the face, and all of that is what builds up to, essentially, at the end, a realistic looking human. Let's do a bit more of that around the sides of the nose there. Spread it around. And we haven't even started doing the flicking or anything yet. Now, people who've followed me for a while will know what I mean by flicking. Whoops. It does not mean throwing your brush like that onto your desk. Flicking, as the people who follow me already know, is when I get various colours on a certain brush, and it's usually a brush like that, and you put thin colour on and you go like that, but you flick it onto the head, onto whatever it is you're painting, and it gets lots of little, essentially it paints lots of little random dots all over the place, but in quite a random way. So you're not painting individual dots, even though I do that. It does lots of dots in quite a random way, but if you control where you put them and what colours you use, it adds a very good overall subtle level of detail. And if you do it with different colours, it just builds up. It builds up the impression of pores on skin, or just little blood vessels, or all the stuff like that. And you can control that by doing different colours as to what effect you're trying to get. But it's really good. And I didn't used to do it. Where's my focus? I didn't used to do it in my early days. It's something that I discovered at some point. I can't remember why I started it. There was a reason why I was trying to do a particular thing, and I came across that. I thought, oh, that might work. Tried it, worked really well, and then I transposed it onto doing it onto all my heads. I think I was trying to recreate fabric or something. Like I was trying to recreate, woven wool or a pair of jeans or something, and I did that to just create the impression of woven, bits of fabric where there was various stuff going on, bits of detail, and then I just realised I can use that for skin, and I've been doing it ever since. So again, I'm still using this brownie ready skinny colour that I used, and I'm just going all around the head. I'm just adding it here and there. Don't they look weird when you put them upside down? Now, as I've said before, I think at some point I'm going to rebuild this camera rig so the camera is further away, further back from the light, so that you will see more of the natural shadows that I see when I hold this head sort of like that. As I look at it here, it looks like a human head. When you tilt her up, it's like getting a photograph taken with a flash. So eventually I'll rebuild this whole rig in front of me to have the camera set back. Whoops, made it wobble there. Have the camera set back, I don't know, like 12 inches or something from the light, so that the light source is coming in at a different angle to the camera, and it just looks a bit better on screen, because at the moment the light is pretty much directly under, the camera is directly under the light, which means that you don't necessarily get to see it as realistic there. It's like someone taking a flash photo as I see it when I'm looking at it like that. But at least that's lighting it up enough for you to see what I'm doing, which I suppose is the important thing here. Just taking some more of that fleshy colour and having a look around to see what I can do. I'm going to put a little bit, and not thin it down too much, in those, I guess they're scars that he's got on his face. I'm just putting a little bit of that colour in those scars. I'm just dabbing some of it off and spreading around any that went over the edge. A little bit of that colour on the tip of his nose, just because it's a nice looking colour, and it's warming things up nicely. So anywhere where I think, oh, that's looking a bit pale or a bit purple or a bit cold, I can put a little bit of this. It's sort of a tanned flesh equivalent, and it just adds a little bit of brown, a little bit of colour, a little bit of wherever I think is needed, wherever I want to put it. Oh, that was a brilliant sentence. A little bit more under his mouth again. Let's put a little bit under his nose. Let's spread it around a bit. A little bit more. Oh, it's starting to look so much more lifelike already. I know I said it on my last one, but as I look at that preview, it looks weirdly, ghostly, pale and horrible, but as I'm looking at it here in person, it's looking really good. Okay, how long have we been? 50 minutes. I'll do a little bit more. Just looking at random pictures of him. Just trying to see where I can add things. Let's take some of that brown, add some to the bottom of his cheek, just over onto his upper lip where his stubble will go. Oh, excuse me. A burp came out of nowhere. I'll just re-damp this brush again. A little bit again, down onto the stubbly moustache part, spread it around. Now, it will need some on the side of his nose. I'll do a little bit on the side of his head. Do some over on this side, and a lot of this is just either what I think should be in a certain place just by looking at the head and going, I think that could be improved by making that bit a slightly different colour, or by looking at the reference photos of him and going, I think his face is a certain colour and trying to match that. But often you're just doing it going by what you think a head should be, but always coming back to the references. Always, always, always. Now, I can show you a head that's had a base layer put on, but nothing else done to it. I just had like one of the early, so Obi-Wan Kenobi had there, that's had some of the base layer of hair and the base layer of skin, but nothing else. So you can sort of see the difference in what we're adding on. Now with Kylo, you've got to imagine him having dark eyebrows, having his eyes done, his lips, his stubble, all the skin detail that we're going to do with the flicking and everything. Stubble, his hair done the right colour. There's still more work to do on the skin, but you can see compared to that one that we're starting to get more variation in a way that's taking it towards being human. So I think, seeing as I did a little bit of talking at the beginning, what was it, like 12 minutes or something of talking, and this has already been almost an hour. Well, I just went to press the trackpad again. We'll bring that onto the main camera, swing that out the way. I'm going to wash this brush. We'll call that for this video, just because I don't want these videos to be too long, because I know some of you are quite happy to have videos that would be 6 hours long and you would just watch all of them. I know some of you love that. But I also know that some of you have lots of stuff to do, and if the videos get anything longer than an hour, to be honest, for some that's even too long, they are hard to keep up with because you don't have the time to watch them. So I'm mindful of not making them too long, even though I could carry on painting. It's also really distracting because my camera is there and my preview image that shows me what the camera is seeing, or when I flick to the overhead camera, what that's seeing, that screen is sort of just there off to the side. So when I'm looking at you, when I'm talking to you, it's very distracting to always look. When you see people taking selfies on their phones and you look at the picture and you can tell they're looking at the screen, not the camera, because they're looking just a bit off to the side. It's like that. It's very distracting to want to look over there and just, for some reason, look at myself while I'm talking, which is ridiculous, but it's because it's there. It's like, oh, is that okay? Is everything right? I've got to try and, I need to put like a big arrow above the camera that just says, look here. So that's part 5, I think we said. We'll call that for now. We've done some extra work on this game. We've done a lot of bunch of stuff all over the place. It's just more of the same, just with different colours and different places. I think the next one we will do some of the flicking. We'll start on that. Now, bizarrely, he's got a very sort of mole-covered face. His skin is like that, but he's not too heavy with things like stubble marks or pore marks or anything like that. His skin is covered in moles, but otherwise fairly plain. So I don't want to go too heavy on the flicking. I don't want to make it too detailed, because then it's going too much in the opposite direction, and it's not realistic to looking like him. But I do want to do some of it. I want to add some texture all over it before we go on and do the moles or even more shading, which we probably will. But let's do some flicking. We'll do that in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for putting up with me. Thanks for putting up with me explaining about my new toys. But I'm sorry, they're exciting. I won't do that. I promise I will try and refrain from using them. I've got a whole collection of memes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Promise I'll behave. So I'll see you in part 6. We'll do some flicking, and thanks for sticking with me. We're back on track now. And that's it. Can't think of anything else to say. I thought I had something else to say, but I can't think of anything. Send me messages if you've got any questions. I know some of you send me private messages either through Patreon or through my Facebook page, or on YouTube. Leave comments or whatever, asking me questions. Do that. I'll try and help you in any way that I can. And that's it. I'll see you in part 6. Look after yourselves. Look after other people. Have a good evening or weekend or week or wherever it is you're watching this, whenever it is you're watching this. And I'll see you next time. That's it. Take care, everyone. See how easy it is for me to press this button? I'm not even looking. Bye.